Is a very well planned attack by the Americans on Venezuela. We still need to get more information from the Americans because officially there's very little that the Americans have actually said. Now, these images that you're getting from Venezuela and from different parts of Venezuela, such as predominantly the capital city of Caracas, they clearly indicate that this could be a much more sustained operation by the Americans. It's not a one hit and done sort of a scenario. It doesn't appear to be that. Remember, the attacks started roughly at about 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. local time in Caracas. The time at this moment in Caracas is about 4:56 a.m. So as people in Caracas, one would assume they have not gone to their beds, they would not be sleeping because of these massive explosions. We still need more updates from Venezuela about the scale of what has been hit and what has been destroyed by the Americans. But remember, Nicolas Maduro has expressed just yesterday in the last 36 hours that he wants to negotiate with the Americans. He is open to the American oil companies coming back into Venezuela and doing business. But that clearly is, it appears, is not enough for Donald Trump, a man who calls himself the President of Peace, who's been asking for a Nobel Prize to be given to him because he stopped 7, 8, 9 odd wars. But this clearly does appear to be a campaign that the Americans will be in for a fairly bit of a long haul. How much of resistance can Venezuela put up is all up in the air this moment. But what is clear is that the Americans have started what Donald Trump had been saying all along. Just a few days ago, he'd put out a statement saying that Venezuela had stolen American land, oil and assets, and it is time for the Americans to go and get it all back. And it is with that social media post of his that he'd imposed a naval blockade of Venezuela. And earlier, he'd in fact imposed he'd shut down the Venezuelan airspace. So there was very little air activity that was happening over the Venezuelan skies anyway, even though the FAA has now said that the Venezuelan airspace at all altitudes is now unsafe for any kind of airplanes to fly there. But these are images that we are getting from Caracas. It's roughly about 4:57, 4:58 a.m. in the morning, the early wee hours of the morning. No one, one can assume, would have gone to bed in Caracas tonight, because this is what is unfolding at this moment. Is this the beginning of the American invasion of Venezuela? Donald Trump, interestingly so far, has been very quiet about what has unfolded in Venezuela. We'll of course get a tweet or a social media post from him, and of course a statement from him. Pete Hegseth, who is now the Secretary of War. The Department of Defense has of course been changed in its name to the Department of War. And this is probably the first war that the Department of War is now indulging in since its name changed. And from the looks of it, these do appear to be some significant explosions that have been set off by the American airstrikes. What exactly were the weapons that the Americans have used? Is it the Tomahawk missiles that the Americans had been mobilizing in the Caribbean? All of this is yet to be told by the Americans. But this image does appear to be of a massive explosion, which has perhaps set off some multiple explosions there on the ground. And we are waiting for more information from the Americans on what their intentions are and what they would like to now do and see. Nicolas Maduro, of course, has made it clear that he wants to negotiate. He does not want war. He wants talks. No war, but talks is what he had been saying. And he's also rejected any form of gunboat diplomacy by the Americans. He's also said that he rejects a slave's peace. But he's open for the American companies to come back into Venezuela and again get involved in the business of oil. Chevron, which is one of the American oil giants, is still operating in Venezuelan oil rigs. Remember, the United States and American oil companies had played a big role right from the 1930s all the way till the 1970s in the development of Venezuela's oil resources. And from the 1970s onwards, the Venezuelans had begun nationalizing their oil resources. And this was a process that was continued by Hugo Chavez, the predecessor of Nicolas Maduro, and subsequently by Nicolas Maduro as well. And it now remains to be seen as to how things proceed from here on. And Professor Glenn Deason is still with us. Professor Deason, the Americans started off their Operation Southern Spear by using the fig leaf of going after the narco trafficking boats, as they claim. But has America now made its intention clear? This is not about narco trafficking, but this is about Venezuelan oil.
Attacking Venezuelan oil refineries wouldn't make much sense if this was about narco-terrorism. I think striking the boats was a good way for the United States to prepare the public for war. So a narrative has been created. But of course, there's been some inconsistencies in this narrative in terms of all the reasons which have been given. As I said before, it's been everything now from promoting democracy to taking back the oil, which they claim belongs to America, to having a region without the influence of American adversaries. So the United States have been a little bit all over the place, but overall this is dominance of the region, which requires taking the resources. But we see the targets on the military bases. We see the targeting of ports of the containers at the ports. We see, of course, the oil refineries, which is a good indication of what the Americans are actually going for.
And Professor, you also mentioned about, is the American public prepared? Now, there is a cost of living crisis that Americans are also facing. What sort of a support do you think the Americans will have if this turns out to be a long, drawn-out war for a president who all through his campaigning had said that he has not come to start a war, but he's come to end all wars, and his focus is going to be on the domestic issues of the Americans. Do you think the American publics will back Donald Trump on this?
No, well, it depends how the war goes. As you said, if the war drags on, then it's another forever war, one which takes American resources, so people will see at home the standard of living is going down while these wars are being fought abroad. So then it would be very unpopular. If Trump is able to do a bit of bombing and come home with something tangible, which suggests that the standard of living will be better in the United States, because the U.S. has a lot of debt and it needs to shore up something with hard assets. So it is possible that he could get away with this. And again, the whole America First base, it's kind of split, because America First is a very vague term. What exactly does this mean? For some, it means just to show enough power so the world will bow to the will of the United States. For others, it means for the United States to stop doing all of these foreign wars, which drains its resources at home. So his base will be split on this. Some will again celebrate it as America taking back control over its near abroad or its backyard. Others will see it as Trump betraying the mandate he was given, because he was going to stop all of these wars. So,
right.
Of course, if Trump gets out of this war quickly, he will probably just take credit for ending yet another war, which he started, of course, but he will claim that he ended it. So so far it can go either way. But as you suggested, I do think that the duration of the war will be one of the variables which will determine whether or not this is a success or a failure.
Interesting. Professor, do continue to stay on with us. So this, of course, is what the scene is like in Caracas ever since the Americans have started bombing different parts of Venezuela there. Jyotsna, there are reactions that are coming in from different parts of the world. Tell us about the nations that have reacted and what they've said about these American strikes on Venezuela.
Absolutely. Now, we earlier heard Gustavo Petro, who had reacted, saying and asking for international reactions to this. We just had Cuba has also now reacted. There's a tweet by Miguel Diaz-Bermudez. I'm just going to read it out for you. Cuba denounces and demands urgent reaction from the international community against the criminal U.S. attack on Venezuela. Now, this is a reaction coming in from, of course, Cuba as well. We had some reactions from Iran as well that condemns the attacks. Now, we have reaction from Iran, from Gustavo Petro. We have reactions from Cuba. Remains to be seen as, of course, now we know that Chinese envoy, of course, special envoy of Chinese President Xi Jinping was just there, a meeting with Maduro for a bilateral meeting. We haven't heard any official comments coming in. It'll be interesting interesting to see any reaction from Russia and China coming in. We have Iran has now reacted to this, condemning these attacks, along with Cuba, and we have, of course, Petro, who has reacted so far. It'll have to, of course, have to be seen what kind of reactions we get from Europe. That's one thing that we'll have to wait and see. And U.S. itself, administration has not reacted. Probably we're just waiting for Trump to maybe for a tweet or a social media post on that. So these are the reactions coming in, of course, calling out and condemning these attacks, which Venezuela calls as U.S. aggressions. And on the other hand, of course, we have Petro and, of course, Bermuda's just calling for international reactions on this, Saleh.
I'm pretty sure the American President Donald Trump is not sleeping. The time, though, in Washington, D.C. is 4 o'clock in the morning. And the president, because this is something that cannot happen without the express consent of the American president, would be watching very closely about what is unfolding at this moment in Venezuela. Professor Deason, this is a big moment, is it not? Because at this moment, we're looking at globally. There is this Russia-Ukraine war where the Americans have been supplying weapons to the Ukrainians. The Middle East is simmering with the conflict that's been going on there since the last 2+ years. And this is a new theater of war that the Americans seem to have gotten involved in a very big way. Do you think the American military, which some would say has been spread thin because of its involvement and backing of Ukraine and also the state of Israel, does it have the enough amount of weapons to actually stage a sustained conflict in Venezuela? Or is this something that the Americans would like to wrap it up through the massive use of air power?
No, I do think they would like to wrap it up quickly because, as you said, they're stretched very thin. They've been just the war on Russia and against Iran. We saw stripped the United States of many, for example, of its interceptor missiles. It's not sure if they will require the same amount of interceptor missiles in this war on Venezuela. But given all of the wars we've seen, from the war on Gaza, we see the attacks on Lebanon, the activities against Syria before the coup, just a general Christmas bombing of Nigeria, the possibility of another war against Iran, which we see more talk about. They want the preparation for a possible war against China, which is why we see the weapon shipments to Taiwan. And of course, they're very deeply involved in the proxy war against Russia. So the United States is stretched very thin. And as all of this is happening, the Chinese have put some limitations on the rare earths, such as antimony, which the United States need to replenish its weapon supplies. So the U.S. can't do exactly everything it wants anymore. This is part of the problems of the multipolar world. That is, the U.S. will have limited resources and have to make priorities. So far, we haven't really seen these decisions being made, essentially where the United States should not be involved. But all of this, of course, is happening at a very delicate time. That is, not only do they have a rivalry with China and Russia, which could take advantage of the United States bogging itself down in yet another war, but also within the NATO alliance, we see that this could sow some divisions. For example, the chief advisor of the Turkish president, Erdogan, has said that Turkey is on the side of Venezuela. So this is the NATO ally with the largest army in Europe. So of course they're not going to go to war against the United States, but this is not going to be a very popular war among America's allies. So no, this could have a lot of ramifications beyond, of course, the suffering of the Venezuelans.